Marvelous!
Unfortunately, I haven't thought to bring any opening statements, but I did make a request of you, and I'm hoping I can see that in your whatever you have written down. And you said you want to start with the Avengers.
Yes.
All right, let's hear it. What do you think?
The Hulk first scene when they try to recruit him, like that whole tense situation.
Oh yeah, I've got a lot written down about that.
Like how he doesn't back down anything. He shows that in this form, Banner is smart.
Mm-hmm.
I was really confused because I heard the Avengers program was canceled.
Yes. It's not like that well explained, but the Iron Man trilogy that we watched. Nick Fury makes a mention that he's been trying to make the Avengers happen for a while.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing at some point he realized it's just not going to work until today.
Loki's speech about how humans are meant to be ruled, apparently. How he thinks.
Mm-hmm. What about it?
Is that how he views... Does he see human society and how it works? Or is that how he views it?
So, I have a feeling that is how he views other people in general. It's a very specific type of villain. Well, I can't even say villain, because there's some people in real life that think this way too. Like, there's some truth to what he says, actually, which is why it's so compelling. Fortunately, I wasn't prepared to talk about this, so I can't exactly pinpoint. Because there's a very specific mentality that goes into it that, like, yeah, well, if you notice, everyone wants to be a ruler until they have to take responsibility. And then they realize, actually, I think I'd rather have someone else take that responsibility. Or if you look like the parallels to real life, I can only speak for the United States. We as the United States have done a lot to give up personal freedom for the sake of security. A lot of those things, I can't imagine too many people would argue against. For those of you who don't understand what I'm talking about, and one that you would probably say, like, be against is TSA, actually.
Yeah.
So we've given up a lot of, like, personal freedom and, like, just being able to move through an airport for the security of making sure that the plane actually lands.
Thor's lightning charging Tony Stark's armor by like 400%.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, how does that work?
I don't know. It's magic. It's comic book logic. Theoretically, he should have exploded.
Yeah. And then Loki gets away from that because of that fight. I was like, I was annoyed. The speech with when Loki was captured and put into his thing and tried to manipulate everyone.
Yes.
And like some people getting immediately changing this perspective. Natasha, like figuring it out. It was very interesting.
I have some notes on that as well.
When everything goes to crap.
At which point?
Like the first when Loki escapes from the place, he drops Thor from orbit. Hulk falls out. Captain America. They start getting attacked.
That point when everyone's down on their luck.
Yep.
Or like the battle before.
Yeah.
All right.
And the helicarrier kind of crashes. They start to come together, and then Loki is like, I was surprised that the Thor 2 movie guy, Thor 1, came back for like the researcher.
Oh, it was not a pick, but I guess it kind of made sense.
When everything goes to crap, like the second time, like
the actual battle in New York, or
yeah, the actual battle in New York, Loki doesn't flee right away.
Why would he?
No, I was surprised he didn't flee when things started going bad.
Oh, like when things started like turning around.
Yeah.
That period of time was like actually kind of super short.
Yeah. That's true. Might not be. Well, Loki was like on the fighting front. I like the Hawkeye, like when Loki catches the arrow and the Hawkeye arrow just explodes.
Oh yeah.
Loki's like, I'm so cool. Boom.
Yeah.
When Tony Stark back on the helicarrier and jumping around a lot on this, he's trying to help Bruce. Apparently, like you think the Hulk should just let it all out. Apparently, what he says. Remember that?
Yeah.
I was like, was that originally planned, or was that a plan, or?
It might be his worldview. Some people, it's that like, just let them fight it out kind of mentality.
I'm upset that Hawkeye never got a movie for himself.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, I'm like, I see through it and like, why does this guy not have a movie? He has like a lot of character development he can go through.
does. I think as I've gone back and watched these, I'm starting to like him a whole lot more. And I loved his, like, Disney Plus series as well.
I was not expecting Agent Coulson to die.
Oh. Yeah, I guess I can't say I expected either. But I can't say I paid too much attention
It was
to
like,
his.
it was like surprising to me. If you noticed, like, watch your other movies, basically.
Yeah.
What are the soldiers called in the battle?
I believe it's the Chitauri that they're fighting.
Chitauri. Did they ever come back?
Not that I'm aware of.
They work for Thanos, I think.
Yeah, they do. I don't think they come back ever, though.
Maybe in Endgame, I think. Because I think some of the enemies were that.
I think that's something... no, that might be, actually.
The puny god scene. The Hulk.
Oh! Hulk versus...
Is it really versus, or is it just decimation?
Yeah.
Stop! I will not be stopped by a mindless bang, bang.
The destruction of Loki.
The blatant problem with the government as they literally send a nuke on.
Oh my goodness. I completely forgot about that.
As they send a nuke to the city. I'm like, why?
Yeah.
Like, that's a big jump.
That's a bit of a leap there.
like we have to send a nuke. This is the only solution you can think of. Instead of attacking the giant portal.
Although I guess it helped them out in the end. Yeah. Otherwise they would have never been able to defeat them.
Yeah. I don't think they would send a nuke so readily.
Yeah. Is that all you have for notes? Or okay. Alright. Wikiskim. There isn't a whole lot that I expect you to know, but I would like to ask anyway. I have a feeling you don't know anything about the Chitauri.
No.
Me neither. Alright, moving on. Avengers. What do you know about the Avengers?
The Avengers...
As a collective, not the individual people.
They change a lot throughout comics. I doubt they're going to change too much throughout anymore, because we've kind of got a movie selection now. But maybe they will change in the future. Who knows?
Well, with all the actors either quitting, leaving, or retiring, I got a feeling there's at least going to be a new set of Avengers. Actually, with the rate that they're kind of turning and burning, we might see quite a bit more shakeup than that. I'm aware of the current team is actually like very different than what you would expect. Well, I say current team, like there's not like several different continuities going on. I believe various versions of Captain Marvel and Miss Marvel are all in as like front and center of the Avengers. There's a few X-Men in there as well. I believe Captain America is still in the Avengers at this point, from what I read.
In the comics?
Yes. Or from what I've looked at least. This is all based on like skimming wikis and reading news articles, things like that. You know anything about S.H.I.E.L.D.?
S.H.I.E.L.D. is basically another group on Earth which helps either the Avengers or Avengers help them, usually in comics, as far as I know.
I didn't do a wiki skim on S.H.I.E.L.D., but I did do a wiki skim on Nick Fury, which I did not actually add to this list. Probably should have.
Oh, I know about Nick Fury. He was originally... He's changed a little bit.
It's changed quite a bit, yeah. But before I get to that, from what I've seen, it looks like S.H.I.E.L.D. was... Actually, from what I've read, it looks like S.H.I.E.L.D. might have predated Nick Fury, which is interesting. They weren't exactly a defend the Earth group at first. At least from what I looked at. I didn't look too hard into it, because I was mostly interested in Nick Fury. But, well, speaking of Nick Fury, what do you know about Nick Fury?
Nick Fury usually was like the leader of like S.H.I.E.L.D. as soon as it started, as far as I know. He was always strong. He was always a planner, I think I portrayed, as far as I know.
Pretty smart dude, yeah.
And I can't remember some other things, but I don't think it's relevant.
Try it. Talk about it anyway.
He was originally white. Yeah. That's about it.
Okay.
He had multiple different weapons.
Nick Fury is actually a little bit fresh in my mind. I don't know if they're going with this portrayal in the MCU. Nick Fury took something called the Infinity Formula. He was actually born in like the Great Depression, but thanks to the Infinity Formula, his aging has slowed, which has allowed him to persist up until about now. I don't know if they're going with that in the MCU, but that's from what I've read.
Was
in the
the
comics.
Infinity Formula made from the Infinity Stones?
No, it was not actually. I forget who made it, but it is some sort of formula that he took that slowed his aging, that essentially allows him to be 40, even though he should be like 80. In fact, actually, he met Captain America when he enlisted as a soldier. That's how old he is.
Wow.
Though, I have a feeling they're not going with this one, because put a black guy as Nick Fury, although I love this black guy as Nick Fury. 2, he was not there in Captain America's backstory. And 3, he doesn't look quite like Cable as he does in the comics. I feel kind of bad. I gave you instructions to talk more about your feelings on the movie, because that's what I did. And I've got like 3 pages of notes. But I noticed yours kind of short. So I'm going to be talking for a while. But
Okay.
thankfully, a lot of these notes are very interactive. Let me make sure.
Avengers movie was about what I expected.
It is. It is about what you should expect from a movie titled The Avengers from Marvel. This movie was not on the original journey because I had already seen it. I saw this movie in theaters, actually. I want you to guess how many other Marvel movies I had seen before The Avengers.
3.
1.
Darn.
I had only seen Iron Man before I watched The Avengers in theaters, which is actually kind of crazy, especially looking back on it and how many like references they pull from the other movies and things like that. Whoever designed the Avengers theme needs a raise immediately. Every time somebody watches this video, just give that man a raise. He's gonna be like the world's first trillionaire by the time we're done. Cause man, when that thing comes on, especially in the later movies, when you hear that theme, it hits. I don't know who designed it, but they need a raise. And that goes on top of the raise that I already gave them before. Get on that.
I do like the Avengers theme.
A bit like Guardians of the Galaxy, this movie does a really good job of making a movie with multiple protagonists. Well, what do you think, actually? Do you think they did it well, or
I think they did it well.
Alright.
I was like thinking like how they get everyone like have a different arc. Like how Hawkeye wants to get back at Loki for those reasons. Hulk has multiple problems. Tony Stark is just doing it basically to help and ego.
So I'm glad you pointed that out, because I did want to mention, they go about it a very different way than Guardians of the Galaxy. Guardians of the Galaxy, you start with Peter, and then eventually you have this one scene where everyone comes together. Yeah. And you get introduced to them through exposition disguised as a conversation, as well as them interacting with each other. Whereas in this movie, they actually spend time on each character, sort of. Hawkeye does not get nearly the amount of like personal time that some of the other ones get. So pretty cool. This movie focuses more on the inter-character dynamics, which is strange, considering we just looked at Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah.
As well as, instead of having like their own moments to themselves. Although there is quite a bit of that in this movie. Although I will say, compared to like Guardians of the Galaxy, there aren't a whole lot of personal character moments, but they really do nail the duo dynamic of like these two characters are talking to each other about their lived experiences. They did that better in Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah, definitely did.
All right. Hopefully that's the last time I reference a movie that came out after the Avengers.
Yeah.
This movie gives every character their own moment to shine as well, which they did. I don't think they did that good a job in. Oh, damn! I just broke my rule. Whatever. I don't think they did as good a job of that in Guardians of the Galaxy.
I think they did pretty fine in the Guardians of the Galaxy.
They did fine. I just think the Avengers did like the whole giving every character their own moment to shine better. There's also a lot of like crossover fan service. So Hulk versus Thor. I remember being in the theater and everyone like absolutely biting to see something like that. What should be the two strongest Avengers going at it. Romanoff versus Barton as well. The human characters fighting each other. Captain America and Loki, things like that. This movie has a lot of lasting repercussions, both on the MCU itself, movies going forward, and other films outside the Avengers. So for what I mean by that, there's a lot of precedents that get established in this movie. Unfortunately, a lot of them hurt the movies going forward. But one thing I love about the MCU is that what was that show? Adventure Time. You can watch these movies separately. You can. And you can, same thing with Adventure Time, you can watch the episodes separately. And you will still understand what's going on. However, the show and series of movies remembers. And if an event is very important to that movie, it's very important to the things going forward. A lot of the movies later, not as many as like they reference Endgame, but a lot of the movies going forward reference this specifically as the Battle of New York. Characters like Hawkeye are dealing with trauma from the Battle of New York. It's such a very, it's kind of a Kickstarter for what we should expect going forward. This movie also does a lot of things for movies in general going forward.
I can see that.
After the Avengers, there's a lot of other companies that want to emulate their success. How many cinematic universes can you think of?
No. No.
Go for it.
Too many.
Talk to me. This is a podcast.
DC, the Sonic movies are getting a cinematic universe.
Oh, man. Can't wait. Wait, who are they going to cross over with?
I don't know.
Alright.
Like, there's tons of failed ones, too. I can't remember them all.
Oh, man, there's a lot of failed ones.
Sorry, I can't remember them off my head.
So, of course, the biggest one that comes up to mind is DC, because DC just had to get the Justice League out, like, so soon.
Yeah.
Godzilla, actually, was going to have his own cinematic universe. So Godzilla vs. Kong, I believe the movie was?
Yeah.
Was supposed to be kind of the Kickstarter for that.
Did it ever go out?
The Godzilla vs. Kong did come out. I don't know if they committed to making a cinematic universe, though. And then, of course, something we're going to brush up against in this journey, Sony. Sony wants to make their Spider-Verse. It's not just Spider-Man, though. There's a few other characters in there.
I remember, like, Morbius. It's Morbin time.
Yes. Oh, man. You might be looking at Morbius later, too, by the way.
Oh, I heard it wasn't the best.
It wasn't the best. It's the best and not the best.
My brother went to watch that.
I did, too.
I didn't because I was not interested.
We'll talk more about that when we get there,
though. Honestly.
One thing I think that hurts movies going forward, specifically for the MCU, though, kind of hurts it going forward is, you ever watch something or play something? Ooh, Smash Bros. Ultimate. Yeah. Perfect example. You look at all the love and things that went into Smash Bros. Ultimate. They brought all the characters back. They brought all these stages. They brought the stage creator. They brought 8-player battles. They brought... I mean... I think the only things that people really miss are individualized target test, subspace emissary. That was never happening again. Anyway.
Why?
Sakurai did not like that people just posted footage of the cutscenes online. He was not very happy with it. Or Let's Plays. Things like that. And that thing they did in Smash 4, the DS version, it was this mode. I forget what it was called. You essentially take a character into this set overworld thing and you fight, gain points for various attributes, and at the end you do some sort of random battle kind of thing. It was cool. They missed that. But outside of that, this is, I would argue, the best Smash game that has been released. You know Nintendo's going to want to make another one, though.
They already confirmed.
Alright. How the hell do you get up from this?
They're going to fake it their success to Anniversary because Sakurai's not a part of it anymore.
Oh, man. Damn. But can they get all the characters, though?
Probably not.
Alright. Well, okay, hopefully you understand what I'm getting at, though.
Yeah.
How the hell... You watch this movie and you think, how the hell do you get better than this? They did. Greatly. But then, of course, you have the same question once you watch that movie, how the hell do you get better than this? Because once you've seen something once, you kind of have to go one up, People don't want to watch something less than Avengers. Well, outside of like individual stories.
Well,
But
yeah, and there's other ways you can go, I think, but I'm not versed enough in storytelling yet. I can't explain it properly. I could try to.
we'll try. This is a podcast.
There's like other paths you can go, like something unexpected, or try to keep going bigger. Divert the path and try something new, like going on a different subject material or something else. But don't divert too much from the path, but just try to reach the same level. But divert it and change it up a little, basically. Like divert from the path and reach the same level you had earlier.
I would like to add a counterpoint. They've been doing that. It has not been going well.
Yeah, it depends on how well. That depends on how well it's executed, and like if you can do that. Some series can't do that. It has to be escalating tension over and over. Can't be just something you throw up.
There's a saying that when you get a job, never give them 100%, because once you give them 100%, they're going to expect 100% all the time.
Yeah.
And I think that has ultimately killed a lot of interest in these Marvel movies. That and a few other things, but we'll get to that later.
Yeah.
So obviously they did go one up on this movie, but there's going to be more Avengers movies. And I don't know if they're ever going to live up to this and Infinity War / Endgame.
I don't think they're gonna ever live the Infinity War / Endgame. They were always setting it up, but you have to have this calm before the storm. You have to go to calm stories before you go into big stories.
Because, like, man, they went hard on this movie.
They went on hard on the movie, so you need a lot more calm before you bring in the storm again. Like, you would need a lot more calm, you need some relaxation. You can't just push it, keep pushing and pushing and pushing out. Or else you're going to burn them out.
Alright. There's one thing I think they could do to renew interest, and it is sort of on that diverging path thing you were talking about. We'll probably have to save that for later, though.
Yep. I'm not an expert in that field. Please do not quote me on that. I am not the best.
Neither of us are.
Yeah.
But that's why you watch or listen. Although we currently have no listeners.
Yeah.
Oh well. It's very interesting to see where everyone started in this movie. So you mentioned the Hulk in India scene, which is fantastic. Actually, before I get to that, you see like where everyone starts in the movie and how different that is. So Hulk he's kind of come to peace with himself, actually. He's like a doctor in India or something. Cap is dealing with trauma, visibly dealing with the trauma of being a fish out of water. Everything is new, and he prefers the old way. Iron Man, however, is enjoying life. He's the happiest person there.
He's like, yeah, this is fun.
Nothing bad has happened to him yet. Well, nothing that bad has happened to him yet. It's not terribly explained where, well, okay, Barton is, Hawkeye is part of S.H.I.E.L.D., I guess.
Yeah.
So is
Black Widow.
Yeah, Black Widow. It's not entirely well explained how well they're doing in their fields, though. Though Black Widow kicks quite a bit of ass in that first scene she's introduced.
It doesn't.
So it can't be that bad.
Yeah, then Hawkeye is just doing missions all the time.
Yeah.
They're doing their job.
If you had... Oh well. Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oops,
I did it again.
Copyright!
Oops. All Guardians. Guardians of the Galaxy, it was very clear that even though it was a multi-protagonist film, it centered on the experiences of Peter Quill, Star-Lord. Do you think there is a central protagonist in this film?
Possibly Nick Fury, if you really...
Yes. That's what I was thinking too, actually. It actually doesn't do a whole lot to focus on him, but when you think of like the perspective of who we're looking at this team from, it's gotta be Nick Fury. Which is interesting, because he's actually, of the characters, maybe the least important to this plot. Well, no, hold on. No, that's not true.
Not even close.
He is the least focused on, definitely.
Yeah.
But I would still argue he's the central protagonist. Go back a bit. That Hulk or Banner confronting Black Widow.
Yeah.
There's a lot I love about this scene, and I think it's mostly down to cinematography. I have once again tried to talk about cinematography and forgotten the terms. I've written one of them down, but I probably should have written this one down. There is an effect you can do in cinematography, or in like films in general, where you display who has power in a specific moment. They do this again with the Loki scene. And I forget what the term is, but you'll notice that when Banner is talking with Natasha, one, they're never in the same camera angle. Or if they are, it's like one person is facing the camera, the other person has the back of their head to the camera. And you also notice that they are at slightly different elevations, or zoomed in or zoomed out slightly. Typically, the person who is in power in this situation has like the closer view. They are slightly higher in angle, and obviously the opposite for the other person. It's like a very subtle way of communicating who's in control here, as well as like the dialogue. That is the most menacing I've ever seen the Hulk in these movies.
I want more of that Hulk.
No.
I wanted more of that Hulk instead of just whatever it is now.
I felt exactly what you saw in Black Widow's face. Like when they zoomed in like super close and she grabbed the gun. They're like, is he about to like smash? It's such a mess. It's like he's very like cool, calm, and collected. He's not fearing for his life. It's wild. As well as like the elements of I wish I'd written down their dialogue. They make some really good points about trust that they also bring up later when Iron Man and Cap confront Nick Fury. Yeah. Trust is a very prevailing theme in this movie. Actually, yeah, those are my next notes. The "and he tells you everything" scene. It's like how much? Hold on. I'm crossing wires. I'm turning gears.
How much can an organization, Sheriff?
I'm putting out fires. I'm rhyming in dyers. Alright. There's something to be said about the character of Nick Fury. How powerful he is when he's not on screen. It's very interesting to behold. Because he doesn't tell people everything. There's reasons for that. Would you say that Nick Fury is like the equivalent of Batman in Marvel?
Kind of.
He's definitely portrayed that way. But unlike Batman, if I needed somebody to fight, I don't think I'd be grabbing Nick Fury. In fact, actually, now that I think about it, if I'm taking like the Justice League as a whole and I needed someone to come fight with me, the only reason I would pick Batman is because he has a plan. That's it. Yeah. Everything that he can do, someone else can do better, except plan.
He's just like, here's what you do, here's what you need to do, here's everything.
However, he's still a powerful entity because he can plan. Something to be said about the way intelligence works in the modern world. Alright, moving on. There's a really good Trope Talks video on excuses for fighting. I forget the exact term as well. But it's always cool when you see the heroes fight. The problem is you just need a really good reason for that to happen. There's some common ones. Mind control is obviously... That comes up quite a few times in the MCU, actually.
Mind control.
Yeah.
The way to get cool scenes.
In this movie in particular, it's Loki is mind controlling Hawkeye. It's actually very threatening.
Yeah, he's actually very a problem.
Yes. Actually, yeah, that's another thing they do really well in this movie, is make the characters feel like they belong. So obviously, the Hulk is a no-brainer. You need someone to smash. Captain America is really good at leading people as well as being a super soldier. Hawkeye and Black Widow are the two characters that I think don't get enough credit for what they actually do. Black Widow's a badass in general, and she really gets snubbed in these movies, in the MCU in general. But she's actually a very capable fighter. I think she could take down, maybe not like Thor and Hulk. Actually, she does take down the Hulk in other movies. But she could definitely go toe-to-toe with someone like Captain America and Iron Man.
In some ways.
Although she does use a lot of the same move to take people down, which is, I'm going to wrap my crotch around your head and just throw you to the ground.
Yeah.
That's a very specific type of move. Cammy does in the Street Fighter. I forget exactly what it's called. Good lord, I did not realize how threatening Hawkeye was, though. He's the squishiest of the heroes. I don't think his fighting ability is quite the same as Black Widow. But, good luck getting to him. He's always shown to be fighting from the shadows.
Yeah.
The most dangerous place to be.
And then he'll just basically snipe you.
As well as thinking like 2 steps ahead. You mentioned when Loki caught Hawkeye's arrow and it just exploded on him. I'm pretty sure Hawkeye planned for him to catch the arrow. Which is insane when you think about it, because this guy typically doesn't miss. He usually hits his target. But this, I would count this as a miss. He did not actually hit the target, but he did. That's not what he was aiming for. As well as his ability to just, like, you know, use underhanded tactics to defeat his enemies.
Yeah.
But back to what I was saying, excuses for the heroes to fight. Misunderstandings, that also comes up quite a few times in this movie. Thor, Captain, and Iron Man, their entire fight is a misunderstanding. As well as a really good way for Loki to get away.
Loki just like, you're fighting. I'm watching this. I'll just leave.
Yeah, he just kind of posts up in the corner, just like watches everything. Disagreements as well. I did not realize how much of Civil War was foreshadowed in this movie. So this, obviously, Captain America versus Iron Man. Their differences. Whereas one person... What is a central conflict? One person kind of relies on tech and other things to ensure that the future is brighter. The other person has had to live in the moment. And he's kind of had to be the hero to make sure that everyone else in the moment survives. I didn't realize how much of their like beef was foreshadowed this early.
I didn't realize that either. I was like, oh, that's a good.
It's pretty easy to miss. I imagine a lot of people would have missed it since Civil War wasn't out at the time. Loki's speech to Black Widow, Natasha Romanoff. Oh, hold up. Apparently I wrote it down. Let me look. Have I lied to myself? Put phone on here. I'm not seeing it.
Okay. If you're not seeing it, that's probably fine. So.
No, never mind. Alright. I did not write it down. But you get the gist of his speech, right?
Yeah.
Alright. Some really good camera work during that scene. Here is the film term I did write down. Have you heard of the Kuleshov effect?
No.
Okay. So, people tend to correlate 2 scenes when they're shown back to back. So, although Loki is talking to Natasha in this one room, it cuts to whatever the rest of the Avengers are doing. And from that, you kind of start to imply that what he's talking about is relevant to whatever they're thinking or doing currently. Although it's entirely possible it actually wasn't.
Yeah.
I mean, based on his dialogue, it probably is, as well as, like, you know, this being, like, a common film thing. And it may not actually be the Kuleshov effect I'm thinking of, but it's at least very reminiscent of it. This might be the best they've done it in the MCU. There's a lot of things in this movie that they did a lot better than everything else, unfortunately. What I also like about the scene, though, is that they use that effect to mislead the audience. So I was talking earlier about how you can convey power by showing... you see, like, in that scene, the camera is focused on Natasha, in her face, her, like, gasp in horror as she takes in what Loki is saying. Your ledger's red and all that. You see the reflection of Loki in that shot. And you see the reflection get bigger. As, you know, what he's saying starts to, like, impact more and starts to hit home more. For both her and everyone else. They then use that to mislead the audience. Like, at the end of that scene, it looks like she just switches characters. He's gonna use Hulk. She explains, like, exactly what Loki's plan is. And that moment I'm like, what? How?
Yeah, like Loki was totally confused.
Yes, it's absolutely amazing camera work. As well as, like, the speech itself. I wish I wrote it down. Oh, there it is. Those who prepare for war versus those who seek to end it. The best way I could summarize the conflict between Captain America and Iron Man. So Captain America is the side of those who prepare for war. He doesn't want to have to fight, but he needs to be prepared to do it. Versus someone like Iron Man, who is specifically building things to shut down the war. The war in this instance doesn't necessarily mean a war, but, you know, any sort of, like, conflict or things like that. Both their cases, it was actually a war. Actually, not in this version. Iron Man is not this is not Vietnam Iron Man. It is also sort of the conflict between them and Nick Fury. Although Nick Fury isn't exactly on board with what S.H.I.E.L.D. wants to do with their new weapon that they're developing. And that actually comes up later in another movie, Winter Soldier. You'll see exactly what the thing they were developing is. But it is a weapon that is designed to monitor and end conflict, rather than be prepared for when conflict arises. I don't think this movie gets enough credit for how they portray the trauma that everyone goes through in this movie. Widow gets snubbed quite heavily. She gets snubbed throughout the entire franchise. But we already talked about Hulk. Actually, there's a very specific scene I did want to talk about, and it's actually... I'm surprised at how casually they just added it in there. He literally describes, at one point in time, I wanted to commit suicide. I tried to commit suicide, and he stopped me. I put the gun up to my mouth, I pulled the trigger, and he spit the bullet back out. Just wild that they just, casually threw in, I tried to commit suicide.
I forgot about that.
Iron Man doesn't start the movie with trauma, but he ends the movie in a bit of trauma. I made references to this when we were doing the Iron Man trilogy. Yeah. How there's a scene, he does it a few times, where he flies up to the sky, his armor starts to get cold, he loses power, he has to fall back down. So this is what I was referencing. That scene where he takes the nuke up into somewhere, space, whatever, that he obviously can't survive in. As well as having the threat of, even if he doesn't survive, the nuke is about to go off. I believe that is the crux of his trauma in Iron Man 3. Because that comes after the Avengers. Captain America is still dealing with getting adjusted to a world that no longer... what was the line he said? When I came back, they told us we won. But I forget the exact words afterwards. Yeah. A world that no longer needs, a Captain America type person. The war is over. So, Hawkeye gains trauma in this movie. He's kind of dealing with the thought of he's been brainwashed. Yeah. Coming out of, being brainwashed. That also comes up in a later movie. But in how much it, clearly affects him. He feels violated. They don't go too much into Nick Fury.
Or Thor.
Thor is dealing with losing a brother. It's not as well portrayed, but it's not...
Not portrayed?
It's also just not that big of a deal when you compare it to, what everyone else is going through. Because, Loki's still alive, and he's also a bad dude. And, at the end, they do go away together. But he is obviously dealing with the fact that, my brother is a psychopath, murderer man, and I have to stop him. It's become a trope in superhero media in general that the city is always destroyed and they never address it. Except I think they kind of started the opposite now. Yeah. In this movie, they definitely do address it. Towards the end of the movie. But they do address, not everybody's exactly happy with their city being destroyed for the plot of these superheroes. I do appreciate that they showed the other side of it, though. That I was just saved by Captain America.
Yeah. The main point of superheroes is to save people.
Yes. I have actually not seen this post-credit scene before. This is my first time seeing this post-credit scene. Interesting in hindsight, too. As well as all the little references they throw in here. To fight the humans, or to fight Earth, rather, is to court with death, and then you just see Thanos smile. Although that's not exactly relevant in this one, because that's not his plot. But it's a nice little Easter egg. Really cute.
Oh, yeah, because Thanos tried...
That was the plot of Infinity War in the comics, that he's just trying to simp.
For death.
Yeah. Very funny in hindsight. Throughout this entire movie, we live in a world of hindsight. Throughout this entire movie, there's so many cool moments and things like that. You get exactly what you expect in this kind of movie. So many cool moments, so many cool shots, so many cool things that they do, directions they take the characters, as well as how open they leave for the story going forward. And although it's not exactly relevant to movies, I find it absolutely amazing how EA fucked it up with the Avengers video game. Have you seen that game?
No.
Okay. Oh man, it just got announced that they're ending support for it. If I told you that, not EA, it might as well be EA. Square Enix. If I told you that the people who created Final Fantasy VII, Final Fantasy VII Remake, as well as a bunch of other... Lara Croft, actually, is what they own. They used to own. They sold it for NFTs. But if I told you that company was making a character action-based video game based on the Avengers franchise, what do you think? What would you expect from that game?
Fast action combat.
Okay.
Maybe some RPG elements.
Okay. All right.
And good game design.
All right. So, fast action combat. All right. Well, I can't do that for you. But what I can do is the same 3 enemies over and over again, and this one enemy that just completely slows down the game. We can do that for you. All right. Good game design. Debatable. You know what? How about this? A compromise. We're gonna have an RPG system, but it's locked behind microtransactions. How about that? You like that? Sound good to you? That's what you wanted, right? All the cool costumes, microtransactions. Oh, and also, in order to progress in the game, you have to collect these resources that you get from what are essentially loot boxes. Some of them you pay for, some of you don't. Sounds good to you, right? Good game? Great game. Love it? He loves it. He loves it, guys. It's the best game ever. How did they fuck that up? It's like one of the most boring games who have come out that year. The story is also kind of bad, but that's an entirely different issue. Actually, no, that is a really good issue. How do you fuck that up? The story of Avengers is not like great by all that means, but it's good enough for what it's supposed to be. I find it amazing that any company could take what at the time was one of the hottest properties on Earth and just make it into this watered down, it's like cosmetic heavy as well as being, it's like a very grindy game, reminiscent of Star Wars Battlefront 2. You remember that kerfuffle?
Oh god, that lets the governments get involved.
Yeah, you gotta collect all these resources to build the thing that you want, but those resources are locked behind these. It's a paywall as well as a massive grind if you want to get it for free. The combat is very samey. You just kind of mash the same button over and over again. There's not a whole lot of nuance between the characters. Not every character plays the same, but they play similar enough that there isn't a whole lot of fun to be had between these characters. The plot is garbage, but that's, again, a separate issue.
So they based it off this Avengers Endgame.
They did not, actually. It is a new story. You don't care if I spoil it, do you?
Not really.
Okay. Ooh, it is based off of something, actually. I forget what it is. This takes place after what would be the Battle of New York in this universe. This is, in fact, actually, the Avengers video game plot takes place in what would be happening right now in the MCU, which is the new generation of heroes that look up to the old generation. The game starts with the Avengers Con, which is the conference that celebrates the Avengers, and the Avengers also come in and sign stuff and pass out comics and things like that. Centers around Kamala Khan, Miss Marvel, the stretchy one, who is a big fan of the Avengers. However, things happen. Taskmaster shows up, but he's working at the direction of AIM, who seeks to take out the Avengers. He releases this Terrigen gas, which eventually is how Kamala Khan gets her powers. They essentially set up a surveillance state around the world. Captain America is presumed to be dead. All the Avengers are disbanding, and it's up to Kamala Khan to kind of get them all back together and save the world from AIM. They are doing some fucked up things.
Yeah. That's
about as... Oh, MODOK does show up in this, though.
How is MODOK existed, I wonder? What's his backstory?
MODOK is an acronym that actually perfectly explains his origin. Organism designed only for killing. He is... Well, in the Avengers video game, he is a head scientist dude, has some sort of disease. In order to cure that disease, they give him this medicine, but they've actually been tricking him the entire time to make him into MODOK. It's weird. He gets a big head and everything. Oh well. I don't know how it works in the comics. I have a feeling it's pretty similar though. Oh well. I forgot the larger point I was going with this. Avengers is a movie. It does hold up. It holds up pretty well. It is something you could go back and watch again. Because it is fan service the film. I imagine if you're a fan of these characters, this is an amazing movie. Or even if you're a fan of comics in general, maybe they don't portray the same way that they would in the comics. Still a pretty good movie.
Yeah.
It's exactly what you would expect. I don't know if this movie's amazing, but it's definitely above average. What do you think?
I think it's above average.
Mm-hmm. All right.
I think there are some missteps they took that could be better, but those are just nitpicks from by myself.
Oh, I should mention, this is also in hindsight. When this movie came out, it was the best movie. But obviously, hindsight is a thing.
2020.
Yeah. It's 2023, actually.